In a quiet American town, a little girl carried to school what she thought was a piece of her home, her heart, her pride, her homemade lunch. But instead of kindness, she was met with whispers, laughter, and mocking eyes. What seemed like a small act of cruelty grew into something that would soon shake the walls of her school. Nobody expected that the same lunch everyone laughed at would one day lead to a shocking moment in front of the entire school assembly, delivered by the last person anyone thought would stand on that stage, her father. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. The morning sun had just broken to the blinds of the Miller family's small home. The kitchen smelled of sautéed onions and spiced chicken, the kind of smell that lingered in your clothes, warm and inviting. Mr. Miller stood by the stove, humming softly as he stirred the pan. His daughter, Emily, sat at the table, swinging her legs as she scribbled in her notebook. "Smells strong, Dad," Emily said, wrinkling her nose but smiling. "That's how food's supposed to smell," he chuckled, tossing in another handful of herbs. "Strong, bold, like it has something to say." Emily giggled, pushing her glasses up her nose. "Do you think the kids at school like it?" Mr. Miller's hands paused on the spoon. He turned to face her, eyes softening. "Sweetheart, food is not about them. It's about you. This is your lunch. It's made with love, not with what's trending in the cafeteria." Emily nodded, though a little unsure. She had seen the other kids at lunch with their neat sandwiches, their shiny juice boxes, their store-bought snacks that always came with colorful packaging. Her lunch never looked like that. Hers came wrapped in foil, packed in a container that smelled of spices the moment she opened it. By the time the school bus honked outside, Emily's lunch was carefully packed into her worn backpack. Mr. Miller kissed her on the forehead. "Be proud, kiddo. This is a piece of home you carry with you." The bus ride was noisy as always. Kids were tossing jokes across the seats. Someone was playing a game on their phone with the sound too loud, and the driver kept shouting for everyone to stay in their seats. Emily sat by the window, clutching her backpack, her thoughts bouncing between excitement for art class and worry about lunchtime. When the bell finally rang for lunch, Emily followed the others into the cafeteria. The room buzzed with chatter, trays clattering against tables, the smell of pizza, fries, and nuggets filling the air. She slid into an empty spot at the end of the table, unzipped her backpack, and pulled out her lunchbox. The moment the lid came off, the scent of garlic and turmeric rose into the air. Heads turned. "What is that smell?" A boy at the next table wrinkled his nose. Another girl leaned closer, peering into Emily's container. "EW, what is that?" "It looks gross." Emily froze, her fork hovering above the food. "It looks like dog food," someone snickered. Laughter rippled across the table. Emily's cheeks burned. She wanted to say something, to explain that it was chicken with vegetables, cooked just the way her dad made it every week. But her throat tightened. Her eyes stung. She picked at the food in silence, trying to shrink into her seat. The mocking didn't stop. "Hey, don't sit too close. The smell might stick to you," one boy said, shoving his tray away with a dramatic wave. Emily pressed her lips together, fighting back tears. She wished the ground would swallow her whole. When the day finally ended and she climbed back into the bus, her lunchbox was still half full. She sat quietly, staring out the window, her fingers curled tight around the straps of her backpack. At home, Mr. Miller was waiting on the porch. He waved, smiling, but the smile faded when he saw Emily's slumped shoulders. "How was school, champ?" he asked gently. Emily shrugged, pushing past him into the house. She dropped her bag by the couch and disappeared into her room. Confused, Mr. Miller opened the lunchbox. The food was barely touched. His chest tightened. He knocked softly on her door. "Emily, you didn't eat. What happened?" There was a pause before her muffled voice came through. "They laughed at me, Dad. They said it was ugly. They said it smelled bad." Mr. Miller stood still, the words hitting him like cold water. He walked into her room, sat beside her on the bed, and pulled her close. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "There is nothing ugly about what you eat. That food is made with love, with history, with pride. But I understand." His voice grew quieter. "Kids can be cruel. They don't know better." Emily's small hands gripped his shirt. "I don't want to take it anymore. I don't want him to laugh." Mr. Miller's jaw tightened. He stroked her hair, silent for a long moment. Finally, he said, "Emily, sometimes the world laughs at things they don't understand. But you and we're going to show them something they'll never forget." His tone carried a weight that made Emily look up. His eyes were calm, but behind them, something burned, something steady, unshakable. She didn't know what he meant. Not yet. But in that moment, a plan was already forming in his mind. The next morning, Emily woke up later than usual. Her alarm had gone off, but she stayed curled under the blanket, dreading the thought of facing another day at school. Mr. Miller tapped on her door. Bus comes in 20 minutes. Her voice was quiet. "I'm not hungry. I don't want lunch today." Mr. Miller opened the door and looked at her. She was already dressed, her backpack zipped, but her eyes told the truth. She wanted to skip the day altogether. He knelt by her bed. I know yesterday was rough, but we don't give up that easily. Not you, not me. Emily's lips trembled. They'll laugh again. He gave a slow nod. Maybe they will, but remember what I said. We're going to change this. For now, I'll pack something simple. Peanut butter sandwich, apple, nothing that stands out. She hesitated, then whispered, okay. By the time she climbed onto the bus, Emily's stomach churned. She clutched her plain brown paper bag, hoping nobody would notice. At lunch, she slipped into the corner of a table and unwrapped her sandwich. For a few minutes, everything was quiet. No one laughed. No one pointed. But the relief didn't last long. Chloe, the queen bee of 7th grade, spotted her. Hey, Emily, where's your mystery food today? Emily kept her head down. Chloe's smirk widened. What's the matter? Your dad finally learned what a sandwich looks like. Her friends burst out laughing. The sound echoed in Emily's chest. Even though her lunch was plain, the teasing didn't stop. That was when she realized something painful. It wasn't really about the food. It was about her. That night, Emily sat at the kitchen table, homework spread in front of her, but her pencil hadn't moved in 10 minutes. Mr. Miller noticed. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. All right, tell me everything. Don't hold back this time. Emily stared at the paper, then finally whispered, It doesn't matter what I bring. They'll always make fun of me. Always. Mr. Miller's jaw tightened. He leaned forward. Then it's time I step in. Emily's eyes widened. No, that'll only make it worse. Emily, he said firmly, there's a difference between protecting you and ignoring the problem. I can't let this keep eating at you. You deserve better. She didn't argue, but fear sat heavy in her chest. She didn't want her dad to march into school, embarrassed and greasy from the repair shop, trying to fight her battles. The next day, Mr. Miller drove Emily to school instead of letting her take the bus. He wanted to see things for himself. He parked across the street and watched the kids stream in, backpacks bouncing, laughter filling the air. He noticed Emily walking slower than the others, head down, hugging her books like a shield. His hands clenched the steering wheel. At lunch, he showed up unannounced. The cafeteria doors swung open, and for a moment, everything froze. Parents rarely showed up during school hours, and his presence made heads turn. Emily's face went pale. Dad, she whispered, mortified. But Mr. Miller didn't walk to her table. Instead, he went straight to the cafeteria staff. He spoke in low, firm tones, pointing toward the kids. Emily couldn't hear the words, but she saw the staff nodding. A few moments later, Mr. Miller left without saying a word to her. That night at dinner, Emily couldn't take it anymore. What did you do? He looked at her calmly. I asked him about food rules, how kids bring lunch, how others buy. I needed to understand the system. Why? He leaned back in his chair. Because, I'm planning something. Something big. But I need time. Emily frowned. What are you going to do? He gave a small smile. You'll see. The next week, rumors started to spread. Mr. Miller had spoken to the principal. He had asked about school assemblies. He had asked about the cafeteria. Some kids whispered that Emily's dad was going to complain. Others joked that he was trying to get the lunch rules changed. The teasing only got worse. At recess, Jason, one of the loudest boys, leaned against the swings. So, Emily, your dad gonna tell us all how to eat beans? Maybe he'll cook us dog food next time. The kids laughed. Emily's fists clenched, but she said nothing. She wanted to scream that her dad wasn't a joke, that he worked harder than any of their parents, but the word stayed stuck in her throat. When she got home, she threw her backpack on the floor. Dad, please. Whatever you're doing, just stop. They'll never change. Mr. Miller crouched in front of her, his face steady. Emily, when I was your age, kids laughed at me too. Not because of food, but because I wore the same pair of shoes all year. They had holes. They squeaked when I walked. And every day, I wanted to disappear. Emily looked at him, startled. But one day, he continued, my father did something that made me realize I didn't need to be ashamed. He showed them who we were, not what they thought we were. That's what I'm going to do for you. Emily's voice cracked. What if it doesn't work? Then at least they'll know who we are. And I'll never regret standing up for you. For the first time in days, Emily's tears weren't from shame. She hugged him tight, burying her face into his shirt. Over the next few days, Mr. Miller started staying up late. Emily would wake up for water and find him at the kitchen table, papers spread out, making phone calls. She overheard words like presentation, permission, and assembly. She didn't fully understand. But one thing became clear. Her dad was planning something bigger than just a talk with the school. The tension built with every passing day. Kids whispered. Teachers glanced at Emily with curious eyes, and even the principal seemed on edge. Something was coming. And no one, not even Emily, knew exactly what her dad was about to do. The following week dragged like a heavy chain for Emily. Every hallway whisper seemed louder, every laugh sharper. She felt eyes on her even when nobody was looking. The cafeteria had turned into a stage she hated stepping onto. Each time she pulled out her lunch, even the simplest sandwich, kids leaned closer, waiting for something to mock. Sometimes they didn't even care what she had. Just her name was enough to spark jokes. "Careful, don't sit next to Emily," one boy said loudly. Her dad might show up with a frying pan. The table erupted in laughter. Emily sat stiff, her face burning. She wished she could eat in the library, or even in the bathroom, anywhere but here. But the school rules were strict: lunch and cafeteria, no exceptions. That evening, she dragged herself into the house. Mr. Miller was at the stove again, stirring a pot. The smell of garlic filled the air. He turned with a hopeful smile. "How was it today?" Emily dropped her bag on the floor. "The same. Worse." The spoon in his hand stilled. He sighed, wiping his hands on a towel before sitting across from her. "Emily, listen. I know this feels like it's crushing you, but I promise, things won't stay like this. I'm working on it." Her eyes watered. "Dad, you keep saying that, but nothing changes. I'm tired of being the joke." Mr. Miller leaned closer. His voice was low, calm but firm. "I don't care if I have to stand in front of the whole town. I'll do it. Nobody humiliates my daughter and gets away with it." Emily didn't know whether to feel reassured or more nervous. She trusted her dad, but she couldn't imagine what he had in mind. The next morning, Mr. Miller called the school again. This time, he didn't ask to speak with the office staff. He asked for the principal directly. Principal Daniels was a tall, serious man known for his no-nonsense attitude. He rarely entertained parents for long, but he listened as Mr. Miller spoke. "I'm not here to complain about the kids," Mr. Miller said plainly. "I'm here to request something. I want to be given a slot at the next school assembly." The line went quiet. Finally, the principal asked, "Why exactly?" "I want to talk to the students. Not about discipline. About respect. About food. About family." Principal Daniels hesitated. "That's unusual." "Unusual doesn't mean wrong," Mr. Miller pressed. "You've got kids laughing at others, tearing each other down. You can't always control what happens in the cafeteria, but you can give them something to think about. Let me do that." After a long silence, the principal finally said, "I'll consider it." When Emily heard about the conversation that night, her fork nearly slipped from her hand. "You're going to talk in front of the whole school?" Mr. Miller nodded. "That's the plan." Her stomach twisted. "Dad, you can't. They'll laugh at you too." "Then let them," he replied simply. "But at least they'll hear me." The news spread quickly. By the end of the week, everyone knew Emily's dad was coming to speak at assembly. The whispers in the hallways grew louder. "Is he going to teach us how to make ugly food?" Jason joked. "Maybe he'll bring samples," Chloe added with a smirk. "Dog food for everyone." Laughter echoed through the locker-lined hall. Emily gripped her books so tightly her knuckles turned white. She wanted to disappear, but a small part of her wondered, what if her dad really did change something? The day of the assembly arrived faster than she expected. The gym was packed, rows of students shuffling into their seats, teachers lining the sides. The basketball hoops had been pulled up, and the stage at the front had a microphone standing tall. Emily sat in the bleachers, her stomach tied in knots. Her dad was waiting in the back with Principal Daniels, wearing his cleanest shirt, his hair combed, but still with the look of a man who worked with his hands every day. When the principal stepped forward and tapped the microphone, the chatter died down. "Today we have a special guest," he said. "Mr. Miller, one of our parents, asked to speak to you all. Please give him your attention." The students murmured, some already snickering. Emily's heart pounded as her dad walked up to the stage. He looked calm, steady, as if he'd been waiting his whole life for this. He adjusted the microphone and scanned the crowd. Silence fell. "I know some of you are already laughing," he began, his voice deep and clear. "That's all right. You can laugh at me. But I need you to hear this." The gym went still. Emily's hands tightened in her lap. She couldn't breathe. Her father's voice carried through the room. "I've heard the jokes. I know what you say about my daughter's lunch, about the food I pack, about us. And I'm not here to yell. I'm here to tell you a story." He paused. The students leaned closer, curious despite themselves. "My father," he continued, "was a factory worker. He didn't have money for fancy things. Most days, my lunch was rice and beans. Sometimes, it was just bread with a smear of oil. Kids laughed at me, too. They called me poor. They called my food garbage. I hated it. I wanted to hide." Emily felt her throat tighten. She had never heard this story before. "But one day," Mr. Miller said, his voice stronger now, "my father told me something I never forgot. He said, 'Son, the hands that make your food are the same hands that keep you alive. Be proud of that, because pride doesn't come in a package. It comes in the work behind it.'" The room was silent. Not even Chloe dared whisper. Mr. Miller leaned closer to the microphone. So laugh if you want. But when you laugh at Emily's lunch, you're not just laughing at food. You're laughing at her father, at her home, at the hands that make sure she eats every day. And that's not funny, it's cruel. The words hit like stones dropped in water, rippling through the crowd. Emily's chest tightened. For the first time, she didn't feel small. She felt seen. But she also knew this wasn't the end. Something told her that what her dad had planned was only beginning. The gym was so quiet that Emily could hear the squeak of sneakers against the polished floor. Mr. Miller stood tall at the microphone, his calloused hands gripping the edges of the podium. I know some of you think it's funny, he continued, his voice echoing through the vast room. But I want you to imagine something. Imagine your mom or dad waking up before dawn, working all day, and still finding time to make sure you don't go hungry. Now imagine someone mocking that. How would it feel? Some of the students shifted uncomfortably. Others lowered their eyes. Emily scanned the bleachers. Chloe sat in the front row with her arms folded, but even she wasn't smiling anymore. Mr. Miller's eyes swept the crowd. This isn't about food. This is about respect. Respect for what you don't understand. Respect for the effort behind something that might look different from what you're used to. For a moment, the silence was heavy. Then a boy near the back called out, "It still smells bad." Laughter broke out again, though not as strong as before. Mr. Miller didn't flinch. He nodded. Yeah, maybe it does. Spices smell different if you've never had them before. But different isn't ugly. Different isn't wrong. It just means you haven't learned yet. The laughter faded quickly. Emily's chest swelled with something she hadn't felt in weeks. Pride. Her dad wasn't stumbling over his words or looking embarrassed. He was standing strong, turning their jokes back into lessons. Then he leaned closer to the mic, and since we're all here, let me show you something. Gasps rippled through the gym as he reached under the podium and pulled out a covered tray. Emily's eyes widened. She hadn't known he'd brought food with him. He set the tray on the table beside him and lifted the lid. The smell of roasted chicken, onions, and herbs filled the air, stronger than anything in the cafeteria. Some kids wrinkled their noses, but others leaned forward curiously. This, Mr. Miller said, holding up a small container, is what Emily brings for lunch. Simple food, made at home. Not perfect, not fancy, but real. Who wants to try it? The room buzzed. No one moved at first. Then, to everyone's surprise, a teacher stepped forward, Miss Clark, the art teacher. She smiled and took a forkful. She said after chewing. This is good. Really good. The gym erupted in whispers. Another teacher came forward. Then a boy from the 8th grade raised his hand. Nervously, he walked down and took a bite. His eyes widened. It's actually not bad. One by one, more students came down, some hesitant, some bold. Every taste shifted the energy in the room. What had started as laughter was turning into curiosity. Emily sat frozen, her face hot, her heart racing. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Chloe whispered something to her friends, rolling her eyes, but she didn't get up. Jason, however, finally stood, swaggering toward the stage. He took a bite, chewed slowly, then smirked. Not gross, but not pizza either. The crowd laughed nervously. Mr. Miller smiled faintly. You're right, it's not pizza. It's not supposed to be. And that's the point. The laughter died down again. He let the silence hang for a moment before speaking. Different homes make different meals. That doesn't make one better than the other. It just makes them ours. So next time you think about laughing at someone's lunch, remember, you're laughing at their story, their family, their life. And that's not something you should ever treat as a joke. The gym was still. Emily's eyes brimmed with tears, but for the first time, they weren't from shame. She wanted to run down to the stage and hug him, but she stayed rooted in her seat, overwhelmed by everything happening. Principal Daniel stepped forward, clearing his throat. Thank you, Mr. Miller, he said formally. That was powerful, but not everyone was convinced. As the students filed out of the gym, some were whispering. He just embarrassed her more, one girl muttered. Free food, though. Another boy shrugged. Can't complain about that. Emily kept her head low as they left, torn between pride and fear. That night at home, she finally burst out. Dad, you embarrass me. Mr. Miller looked stunned. Em, I thought, you made it worse, she cried. Now they'll never stop. They'll say we had to beg people to like our food. Her dad's shoulders sagged. He had been so sure he was helping. He rubbed his forehead, silent for a long moment. Finally, he said softly, maybe you're right. Maybe it didn't change everything today. But give it time, Emily. Seeds don't grow the same day you plant them. She crossed her arms, angry, but deep down she knew he wasn't wrong. The next few days at school were tense. Some kids looked at her differently, not mocking, but not exactly friendly either. Others whispered when she walked by. Chloe still sneered, but she didn't make as many loud jokes. Jason, however, was relentless. Hey, Emily! He called one day in the cafeteria, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You gonna open a restaurant with your dad? Maybe call it Ugly Lunches." Laughter bubbled again. Emily froze, but before she could respond, a boy from another table spoke up. "At least her dad can cook. Better than my mom burning frozen nuggets every night." The cafeteria went quiet for a moment, then erupted with mixed reactions: laughter, surprise, even a few nods of agreement. Emily blinked. For the first time, someone had spoken up for her. She didn't know what it meant yet, but something was shifting. At home that night, she told her dad what happened. He smiled, pride shining in his tired eyes. "See? It's starting. One voice leads to another." Emily wasn't convinced, but she couldn't deny it. Something had changed in the air. Still, she had no idea how much bigger things were about to get. The Monday after the assembly felt heavier than usual for Emily. She walked through the school doors with her backpack pulled tight against her shoulders. She could feel eyes following her, but this time the whispers weren't only mocking. They were curious. "Is that the girl whose dad cooked at the assembly?" A sixth grader asked his friend. "Yeah, the one with the weird food," the friend replied, though not with the same sharpness as before. Emily kept her head down, unsure whether she should feel proud or embarrassed. At lunch, she sat at her usual corner table. Slowly, she unzipped her lunchbox. The smell of garlic and onions escaped into the air. Normally, laughter would have started immediately, but this time, something different happened. Two girls from another grade leaned over. "Hey," one of them said, "is that the same food your dad brought to the assembly?" Emily's stomach tightened. She nodded slowly. "Can we try some?" Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. She blinked at them. "You want to try?" The girls nodded eagerly. Emily hesitated, then pushed the container forward. They each took a bite. Their eyes lit up. "This is actually good," one of them said. "Way better than the cafeteria pizza." The kids around them laughed, not at her, but at the joke. For the first time, Emily didn't feel like the target. She felt like she was holding something special. But the shift wasn't total. From across the cafeteria, Chloe's sharp voice cut through the air. "Don't fall for it," she scoffed, glaring at the girls. "She's just trying to make her weird food cool. It's still gross." Her words carried weight, and some kids pulled back, suddenly unsure. The fragile moment cracked. Emily's stomach sank. She shoved her food back into her lunchbox. Her brief flicker of hope extinguished. That night at home, she told her dad everything. They liked it, until Chloe ruined it, she said bitterly. Mr. Miller's jaw tightened. "Chloe," he muttered. He'd heard the name before, loud, popular, always leading to teasing. Emily buried her face in her arms. "It doesn't matter what you do. As long as she keeps laughing at me, everyone else will too." Mr. Miller leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He had dealt with stubborn people before. Customers who didn't believe his repairs would work. Neighbors who judged his beat-up truck. But this was different. This was about his daughter. The next day, he went to the principal's office again. "Mr. Miller," Principal Daniels said with a sigh, "I have to admit, your assembly speech made an impact. But what are you doing here again?" Mr. Miller leaned forward. "Because the job's not finished. There's still one kid leading the rest. I'm not asking you to punish her. I'm asking for permission to do something bigger." The principal raised an eyebrow. "Bigger? I want to host a school lunch event," Mr. Miller explained. "One where parents can bring their homemade food. Not just me, everyone. Let the kids see that food comes in all shapes, smells, and sizes." The principal's eyes narrowed. "That's ambitious." "Ambitious doesn't mean impossible," Mr. Miller replied steadily. After a long pause, the principal sighed. "All right, I'll allow it, if you can get enough parents on board. Otherwise, it'll look like favoritism." Mr. Miller's lips curved into a determined smile. "I'll get them." When Emily heard, she nearly dropped her spoon. "Dad, you're not serious." "I am," he said firmly. "This isn't just about you anymore. It's about every kid who's ever been mocked for being different." Emily's stomach churned. She wanted to believe him, but she couldn't shake the fear of becoming a bigger target. Over the next week, Mr. Miller went door to door, talking to parents. Some were hesitant, but others lit up at the idea. A Mexican mother promised to bring homemade tamales. A Korean father offered to make kimchi rice. A grandmother down the street said she'd bake pies the way her mother used to. Slowly, the idea began to spread, but not everyone was supportive. Chloe's mother, when Mr. Miller knocked on her door, gave him a cold look. "I don't see the point of this," she said sharply. "Children eat what they like. No need to push strange food on them." Mr. Miller kept his voice calm. "It's not about forcing anyone. It's about teaching respect." "Well, I don't want my daughter involved," she said, slamming the door in his face. As he walked back to his truck, Mr. Miller's jaw tightened. He had expected resistance, but he also knew one refusal couldn't stop him. Word of the event spread quickly through the school. Some kids were excited, talking about what their parents might bring. Others mocked it, calling it the Weird Food Festival. Emily felt the tension building every day. She hated the spotlight, hated being at the center of it all, but she also couldn't ignore the flicker of hope growing inside her. The day of the event finally arrived. Tables were set up in the gym, each one covered with homemade dishes. The smell of spices, bread, roasted meats, and sweet desserts filled the air, blending into something both strange and inviting. Parents stood proudly by their tables, offering samples, explaining recipes. Kids roamed from station to station, their eyes wide, their plates filling with food they had never tasted before. Emily stood beside her dad at their table, watching nervously as students approached. Some hesitated, but many came forward, curious. They tasted. They nodded. Some even smiled. "Whoa, this is actually good," one boy said with his mouth full. "Way better than cafeteria nuggets." Emily's heart lifted. But across the room, she saw Chloe standing with her arms crossed, her face tight with disdain. She wasn't eating. She wasn't smiling. She was just waiting, her eyes fixed on Emily like a predator. Emily's stomach twisted. She knew Chloe wasn't going to let this go quietly. And deep down, she sensed something was about to happen that would push everything over the edge. The gym buzzed with noise. Kids carried plates stacked with food, parents explained recipes, and teachers moved through the crowd trying samples. The air smelled like roasted chicken, cinnamon, garlic, and fried dough all at once. Emily stood behind her dad's table, her stomach in knots. She watched kids try her father's beef stew and fried plantains, some going back for seconds. For a moment, she felt almost proud. Then out of the corner of her eye, she spotted Chloe. Chloe leaned against the wall, arms folded, her face twisted in a smirk. She wasn't sampling anything, wasn't mingling. She was watching, waiting. Emily's hands shook as she passed the plate to a boy. Her dad noticed and leaned close. "Ignore her," he whispered. "Focus on the ones who came here to eat." But ignoring Chloe wasn't easy. Not when Chloe's presence had the power to flip the crowd in a heartbeat. At first, it seemed like Chloe was just sulking. But then, she pushed off the wall and sauntered toward the center of the room. She clapped her hands loudly. "Hey, everyone," she called out. "You're all falling for this." The chatter died down. Dozens of heads turned. Chloe basked in the attention. "It's just food," she sneered. "Weird food. Some of it looks like slop. Don't you see what they're trying to do? Make us think gross food is special." A ripple of uncertainty spread through the room. Some kids glanced at their plates as though suddenly unsure. Parents stiffened. Mr. Miller's jaw tightened. Emily's chest burned. Before Chloe could say more, a teacher stepped forward. "Chloe, that's enough." But Chloe wasn't done. She grabbed a paper plate from a nearby table and held it up. It was piled with colorful rice and vegetables. "Would anyone actually choose this over pizza or fries?" she challenged, her voice loud and sharp. Some kids laughed nervously. Others looked away. Emily's face went hot. She wanted to disappear. But then, something unexpected happened. A boy from the soccer team, one of the popular kids, raised his hand. "Actually, yeah, that rice was good. Way better than I thought." Murmurs rose. Another girl chimed in. "The tamales were amazing." Someone else shouted, "Did you try the pie?" Suddenly, the gym wasn't quiet anymore. Kids were defending the food, laughing, talking. Parents smiled at each other, relieved. Chloe's smirk faltered. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Emily's dad saw the opening. He stepped forward, raising his voice just enough to be heard over the crowd. "You know what's funny?" he said. "Food is supposed to bring people together, but some folks use it to divide. Maybe it looks different, maybe it smells strong, but when you taste it, you find out it's not so strange after all. It's just someone's story on a plate." The gym grew quieter. Kids listened. Parents nodded. Emily's heart thudded. For once, the spotlight wasn't burning her. It was protecting her. But Chloe wasn't finished. Her face flushed red, her voice sharp. "You're just trying to make yourself look good, Mr. Miller. None of this changes the fact that Emily brings ugly food to school every day. Everyone knows it." Emily froze. The words sliced through her like a knife. The room felt smaller, hotter. Kids shifted uneasily. Some looked at Emily with sympathy, others with confusion. Her dad didn't flinch. He looked Chloe straight in the eye. "Ugly food," he said calmly. "Funny, because I see kids lined up, enjoying every bite. Maybe the problem isn't the food. Maybe the problem is the way you see things." A heavy silence followed. Chloe's jaw clenched. For once, she had no quick comeback. But Emily didn't feel triumphant. She felt exposed, her chest tight. She couldn't stand all those eyes on her. She grabbed her lunchbox and bolted out of the gym. Her sneakers slapped against the polished hallway floors as she ran, tears stinging her eyes. She didn't stop until she reached the empty library. She dropped into a chair and buried her face in her arms. Why couldn't things just go back to normal? A few minutes later, the door creaked open. She didn't look up. "Emily," her dad's voice called softly. She wiped her face quickly. "Go away." He stepped closer, his boots echoing on the tile. I'm not here to embarrass you. She looked up at him, her eyes red. Why do you keep doing this? Why can't you just leave it alone? He crouched beside her. His voice was steady, but there was weight in it. Because I see what it's doing to you. You think hiding will make it stop, but it won't. Kids like Chloe don't stop. They only stop when you stop letting them win. Emily shook her head. I can't fight her. You don't have to fight her, he said gently. You just have to stop running from her. Her chest tightened. She wanted to believe him, but the fear was heavy, almost crushing. Back in the gym, Chloe had retreated to a corner, but her mother had arrived, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She surveyed the tables with a look of disdain. This is ridiculous, she said loudly enough for nearby parents to hear. You're all wasting time with this circus. The air grew tense again. Parents glanced at each other nervously. Teachers exchanged wary looks. Mr. Miller heard the commotion from the hallway and straightened. He knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Emily followed him back, her steps hesitant but steady. When they entered the gym, all eyes shifted again. Chloe's mother stood in the center, her hand on her daughter's shoulder, her face hard. This whole event is inappropriate, she declared. It singles out children and forces them into things they don't want. Mr. Miller stepped forward slowly. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with resolve. No one was forced, he said firmly. The kids chose to taste. They chose to learn. And judging by the smiles, most of them enjoyed it. That's what matters. The crowd murmured. Some parents nodded. Others frowned. Emily's pulse quickened. The tension was thick, almost suffocating. She didn't know what her dad would do next. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about food anymore. It was about pride, respect, and who would walk away with the final word. And Emily knew. The fight was far from over. The gym was heavy with silence. All the chatter from earlier had vanished. Chloe's mother stood tall in the middle of the room, her chin lifted, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. This is not education, she declared. This is a show. My daughter was humiliated in front of everyone, and I won't allow it. Emily's stomach churned. She wanted to shrink into the floor. All those eyes, teachers, parents, students, they weren't just watching her anymore. They were watching a storm build. Her dad didn't move right away. He studied Chloe's mother, his jaw set, his hands resting at his sides. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but every word carried weight. No one humiliated your daughter, he said evenly. She chose to make comments that hurt other kids. All we did was let the food speak for itself. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some parents exchanged looks. A few even nodded. Chloe's face went red. That's not true, she snapped. Everyone laughs at Emily's gross lunches. I just said what everyone thinks. Her words hit Emily like stones. She wanted to run again, but her dad's presence held her in place. You see, Mr. Miller said, keeping his eyes on Chloe's mother. That's the problem. When a child learns to put down others, it usually doesn't start with them. It starts at home. The room went dead quiet. Chloe's mother's lips tightened into a thin line, her face flushed with anger. How dare you, she hissed. A teacher quickly stepped between them, trying to ease the tension. Let's keep this civil. This event is about community, not arguments. But the damage was done. The parents in the crowd were split. Some whispered in agreement with Mr. Miller. Others frowned, uncomfortable with how direct he had been. Emily's heart pounded. She couldn't believe her dad had said that out loud. Brave, yes, but also dangerous. Chloe yanked her arm free from her mother's grip and stormed toward Emily's table. She snatched a spoon and plunged it into the pot of stew. Fine, she shouted. If this is so great, let's see who actually wants it now. Before anyone could stop her, she flung a spoonful of stew onto a plate and shoved it at a boy nearby. Eat it, she dared. The boy froze, eyes wide. The crowd stirred, unsure what to do. Mr. Miller stepped forward, his voice like steel. Put the spoon down, Chloe. But Chloe only laughed bitterly. What's the matter? Afraid no one will like it after all? Emily's hand shook. Her dad's pot of stew, the food he had cooked with so much care, was now a weapon in Chloe's hands. Before the situation could spiral, something unexpected happened again. The boy she had shoved the plate at, one of the quiet kids, who usually never spoke, took a bite. The crowd held its breath. He chewed slowly, swallowed, and then looked Chloe in the eye. It's good. A wave of whispers spread through the room. Another kid stepped up and grabbed a plate. Then another. Soon, a small line had formed at Mr. Miller's table again. Chloe's face crumpled with frustration. She threw the spoon back into the pot with a loud clang. Whatever, she muttered, storming back to her mother's side. Her mother pulled her close, glaring at everyone as though daring them to speak. Emily couldn't believe what she was seeing. Against all odds, the food was winning. Not by force, not by speeches, but simply by being what it was. But her relief didn't last long. The principal walked in. Mr. Henderson, tall and stern, his suit pressed sharp as if ironed that morning. His presence shifted the air instantly. Students straightened, teachers hushed. "What is going on here?" he demanded, scanning the room. The teachers rushed to explain, their words tumbling over each other. Mr. Henderson raised a hand to silence them. His eyes landed on Emily's dad, then on Chloe's mother. "I've heard enough," he said firmly. "If this event has turned into fighting, we'll end it now." Emily's chest clenched. This was it. All her dad's effort, all the food, all the moments that almost turned good. It would all be erased. But Mr. Miller didn't back down. "Sir, with respect," the kids were learning. They were trying new things. It was working, until some chose to disrupt it. Chloe's mother stepped forward quickly. "Are you hearing this? He's attacking my daughter. He's turning the whole school against her." The gym grew tense again. The principal's eyes narrowed. Emily could see it, the scales in his mind tipping one way, then the other. Her stomach twisted. What if he shut everything down? What if this became another reason for kids to mock her forever? The principal finally spoke. "Both sides will get their say," he announced. "But not here. We'll settle this at the assembly tomorrow, in front of everyone." Gasps echoed. Tomorrow's assembly was supposed to be about school announcements and awards. Now it was about them. Emily's blood went cold. An assembly? In front of the entire school? Her dad nodded once, calm but firm. "Fine, we'll be there." Chloe's mother smirked, her arm tightening around her daughter. "So will we." The tension broke into low murmurs as parents began gathering their things. Kids whispered to each other, already spreading the news like wildfire. Emily stood frozen, her mind spinning. Tomorrow, everyone watching, everyone judging. Her dad touched her shoulder gently. "Let's go home." On the drive back, the silence was heavy. The hum of the engine filled the car, but neither of them spoke. Finally, Emily blurted, "Why did you agree? Why didn't you just walk away?" Her dad kept his eyes on the road. "Because sometimes walking away makes them think they've already won. And I won't let that happen, not to you." Emily pressed her forehead against the window, her reflection staring back at her. Her chest ached with fear. Tomorrow wasn't just another day. Tomorrow would decide everything. At school the next morning, the air buzzed with rumors. Students clustered in groups, whispering and pointing. Emily felt their eyes follow her everywhere. By the time the bell rang, she knew the whole school was waiting for one thing: the assembly showdown. Her palms were sweaty. Her heart raced. She wasn't sure how much more she could take. But when she looked at her dad walking beside her, steady and unshaken, a small spark lit inside her. Tomorrow wasn't just his fight. It was hers too. And whether she liked it or not, the moment was coming fast. The morning of the assembly felt heavier than any morning Emily had ever lived. She woke up with her stomach twisted into knots. Her alarm clock buzzed, but she didn't move right away. She stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying every whisper she had heard in the hallways the day before. By the time she walked into the kitchen, her dad was already up, dressed in a clean shirt and jeans, leaning against the counter with a cup of coffee. He looked calm, too calm, as if he were preparing for something far bigger than a school event. "You don't have to come," Emily mumbled, picking at the hem of her hoodie. Her dad shook his head. "Yes, I do. And so do you. This isn't about food anymore, Emily. This is about respect." She swallowed hard. The word respect echoed in her chest. The drive to school felt like a countdown. Students were walking in groups along the sidewalks, their voices loud, their laughter sharper than usual. She knew they were talking about her. She could almost hear them whispering. The girl with the ugly lunch. The girl whose dad made a scene. When they reached the school, the parking lot was already full. Parents were arriving earlier than usual, as if the whole town had been invited to watch. Inside, the gym had been transformed for the assembly. Folding chairs filled every space. The stage at the front was set with a podium, the school's banner hanging behind it. Teachers stood along the sides, their faces stiff, their eyes darting toward Emily and her dad as soon as they entered. Emily felt her knees weaken. She wanted to disappear, but her dad placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and firm. "Stand tall," he whispered. The buzz of voices quieted when Principal Henderson stepped to the podium. His presence demanded silence without a word. He cleared his throat, his sharp gaze sweeping across the crowd. "This assembly," he began, his voice deep and steady, "was originally meant for school announcements. But after yesterday's incident, it's clear we have something larger to address, something about how we treat one another." Emily's heart thudded in her chest. Every pair of eyes in the gym seemed to lock on her. The principal continued, "We will hear from both sides, respectfully, fairly. And when it is done, we will all walk out of here understanding each other better." Whispers spread across the room, like ripples on water. Chloe's mother was the first to step up. She strode to the podium, her heels clicking against the wood floor. She pulled Chloe with her, standing tall with her arm around her daughter. "My child has been unfairly targeted. she declared, her voice sharp. She has been accused of bullying, when in truth, she was only speaking what everyone else was thinking. The food in question was unsightly, embarrassing, and not fit to be displayed at a school event. Gasps filled the room. Emily felt her face burn, her stomach twist tighter. She wanted to run, but her dad didn't move. Chloe's mother went on, her words sharp as daggers. And then, when my daughter voiced her opinion, she was humiliated in front of her peers by an adult, a grown man who should have known better. Is this what we call teaching? Is this what we want for our children? To be shamed in public? The crowd murmured. Some parents nodded. Others looked uneasy. When she stepped back, Chloe smirked, hold her chin high as if victory were already hers. The principal turned to Emily's dad. Mr. Miller, your turn. The gym fell silent. Mr. Miller walked slowly to the podium, his boots heavy against the floor. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, almost quiet, but it carried through every corner of the room. My daughter has been mocked for bringing the food I cook at home, he began. Food I prepare after long shifts. Food that comes from our family's history, our effort, our love. She didn't ask to be made fun of. She didn't ask to stand out. All she wanted was to eat her lunch without being treated like she was less than the others. Emily's eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink them away. Mr. Miller continued, his voice gaining strength. Yesterday wasn't about embarrassing anyone. It was about showing the students that something mocked as ugly could actually be full of value. And when given a chance, many of them saw that for themselves. He paused, scanning the crowd. Parents shifted in their seats. Kids fidgeted, their eyes glued to him. But let me be clear, he said, his tone dropping lower. Mocking someone's food, their clothes, their background, these are not harmless jokes. They are seeds. Seeds that grow into cruelty, into division. And if we let those seeds take root here in this school, we will regret it later. His words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Chloe's voice cut through the silence. You're just making excuses. Nobody wants that nasty food. It's gross. A few kids laughed nervously. Others looked away. Emily's heart sank. She wanted the floor to swallow her. But before her dad could respond, something unexpected happened again. A teacher from the back, Mrs. Ramirez, the history teacher, stood up. I tried the stew yesterday, she said firmly. It wasn't gross. It reminded me of the meals my grandmother used to make when I was little. It was good, and more than that, it meant something. Gasps and murmurs spread again. Then another teacher raised his hand. I had some too. He's right, it was about respect. Emily blinked, hardly believing what she was hearing. One by one, voices rose from the crowd. Parents, students, teachers. Some shared their own memories of homemade food. Others simply said they had enjoyed it. The tide in the room began to shift. But Chloe's mother wasn't finished. She yanked Chloe forward and snapped. You don't have to like it, but you don't get to force it on everyone else. The room erupted into noise, arguments, whispers, even a few cheers. The principal slammed his hand on the podium. Enough, he barked. Silence fell again, sharp and tense. He took a deep breath, his face stern. This assembly is not about choosing sides. It's about deciding what kind of community we are. And from what I've seen, there are lessons here, lessons we will all have to face. Emily's pulse hammered in her ears. The air was thick, the room divided. The decision wasn't made yet, but the stage was set. Her dad stepped back on the podium, his eyes finding hers in the crowd. He gave her a small nod, as if to say, hold on, it's not over yet. And Emily understood. The real moment, the one that could change everything, was still coming. The gym was so quiet that even the sound of the old ceiling fan seemed louder than usual. Every eye was fixed on the stage, waiting for what would happen next. The room felt split in half, some on Chloe's side, some leaning toward Emily and her father. And right in the middle stood Principal Henderson, his face tight, his hands gripping the podium like he was holding the weight of the whole school. Emily sat stiffly in her seat, her heart racing. Her palms were sweaty, her throat dry. She wished she could disappear, but she also knew this was it, the moment where everything would either crumble or finally make sense. Principal Henderson's voice broke the silence. We're not here to fight, he said, his tone sharp but steady. We're here to face something that has been ignored for too long. Bullying, mocking, shaming others for being different. The word bullying seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Chloe shifted uncomfortably, but her mother squeezed her shoulder, urging her to stand tall. Then Henderson turned his gaze to Emily's father. Mr. Miller, you spoke about respect. But the truth is, words aren't enough. Actions are what count. A murmur ran through the crowd. Emily's father didn't flinch. He stepped forward again, this time holding something in his hands. A large metal pot, covered with foil. Emily's eyes widened. She hadn't even noticed him carrying it earlier. Gasps spread across the room as he placed the pot on a nearby table. I knew today would matter, he said, peeling back the foil. Steam rose, carrying the rich, earthy scent of his stew. So I brought this. The smell filled the air quickly, warm and heavy, cutting to the tension like a knife. Kids in the front row leaned forward, their noses twitching. Teachers shifted, curious. "This," Mr. Miller said, ladling the stew into small cups that had been stacked on the table, "is the same meal Emily brought yesterday. The same meal she was mocked for." Emily froze. Her stomach tightened. Was this really happening, in front of everyone? Her dad didn't stop. Anyone brave enough to judge it with their own taste, not their eyes, come forward. For a long moment, no one moved. The gym was silent, except for the faint bubbling sound from the pot. Then, slowly, a boy from the basketball team stood up. He walked to the table, grabbed a cup, and tasted it. His face stayed neutral for a second. Then he nodded. "It's good," he said simply. The silence cracked. Another kid stood, then another. A teacher followed. Soon there was a line forming at the table. Students, parents, even teachers, each taking a small cup, tasting, and murmuring to one another. Emily watched, her heart thumping. She couldn't believe it. The very same food she'd been mocked for yesterday was now being passed around like something valuable. But Chloe sat frozen, glaring, her lips pressed tight. When her mother whispered, "Don't you dare," Chloe only scowled deeper. When the tasting slowed, Mr. Miller spoke again. "Food is more than how it looks. It tells a story. My grandmother taught me how to make this stew. She made it during hard times, when we had almost nothing, but somehow she turned it into something warm, filling and full of love. Every time I make it, I remember her hands, her voice, her care. That's what Emily was bringing here yesterday. Not something ugly, something real." He paused, letting the words sink in. "So if my daughter's food is ugly, then so is her history. So is her family. And I don't believe anyone here wants to say that." The gym stayed quiet. Some parents shifted uneasily. Some looked ashamed. A few even nodded. Then, finally, Principal Henderson stepped forward again. "I've heard enough," he said, his tone cutting through the whispers. "What I see here is clear. A student was mocked unfairly. And when given a chance, this community realized the truth. What matters isn't appearances, but respect." He turned toward Chloe, his face stern. "Chloe, mocking others may have seemed like a joke to you, but the damage it causes is real. You owe Emily an apology." The word struck like a hammer. Every head in the room turned toward Chloe. Her face turned red. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her mother started to protest, but Henderson silenced her with a look. Finally, Chloe muttered, "Sorry." The word was small, sharp, forced. Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to believe it, but she knew the apology wasn't real. Still, hearing out loud in front of everyone mattered more than she had expected. Her dad placed a hand on her shoulder. She looked up at him, and he gave a small nod, one that told her she had nothing to be ashamed of. The assembly ended soon after. Parents filed out, murmuring to each other. Teachers stayed behind, talking quietly. The pot of stew was almost empty. As Emily and her dad walked out of the gym, whispers followed them. But they were different now. Not mocking, not cruel. Curious. Respectful, even. In the parking lot, Emily finally spoke. "Dad, you didn't have to do all that." "Yes, I did," he said, simply, unlocking the truck. "Because if I didn't, nothing would have changed. And you deserve better than silence." She climbed in, her chest lighter than it had felt in weeks. For the first time, she didn't feel like hiding. She felt seen. That night, as she sat at the dinner table, Emily thought back to the gym, the smell of the stew, the shifting faces, the moment her dad stood tall in front of everyone. It wasn't perfect, and it hadn't magically erased the pain, but it had turned the whispers into something else. It had given her courage, and as she picked up her spoon, she smiled faintly. Tomorrow, she would walk into school again, but this time, she wouldn't feel small. She would carry her lunch with pride, ugly or not, because she finally understood the truth. It wasn't ugly at all. If you like this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Also and other to strengthen our community. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.